Yep, everyone, it's that time of month again, and yes, I did forget it. Well, I didn't really forget it last month. I made it, but just wasn't really able to edit in time, and by the time it would have come out, it'd be like halfway through the month, and even now we're already like 10 days into this month I was recording of this video. But, yeah, what you see here, we got a tier list. Basically, the decks I consider to be the best of the format, or competitive decks that you might see. There might be one or two here that are missing that might either go in the rogue or everything else. This is just what I've seen, what I can find. And without further ado, let's get right into it. First, Yugioh. I'm going to put this in a tier 2 for right now. It's definitely starting to make a small presence, and I feel like a lot of people don't really know, like, honestly, where do you hand trap this deck? I don't know. Like, maybe you could, like, ask the Achichi. Was it Achichi? The yellow one? Or was it the red one? I don't know. But I feel like the overload of hand trap style that's kind of calmed down a bit, so that gives a little more breathing room for a deck like Yugioh. Tri-Brigade. Rogue is the best I can give it. While yes, it does top an event here or there, I just feel like it doesn't really have a very solid win condition. Like, its main form of disruption was the Seamorph Bird of Sovereignty, which you'd go into the Berry statue, but now you don't have that option. So you don't really have a whole lot of strong plays that you can really funnel everything through. But then again, this is a deck that, even if it doesn't have a win condition, sometimes it can still get wins just on the sheer advantage on how the deck functions as a whole. But compared to everything else, I just don't really think it's going to be doing too much. Dragon Link. This is actually one that's really hard to kind of rate, because Dragon Link's definitely been seeing a good resurgence. Now there's I believe, Adventure Dragon Link. Another thing, more adventure, because of course we gotta see more of that. And Dragon Link is definitely a deck that can play through hand traps, and I feel like decks that can play through hand traps, especially in this format, are going to be much stronger. And Dragon Link is definitely a deck that can survive a good amount of hand traps, minus stuff like Dimensional Shifter, but a lot of things you really can't survive that. And I feel like, I wouldn't say it's quite the best deck of the format, but it is a very strong tier 1.5, almost a tier 1. I feel like I'm going to need a little bit more, see a little bit more from this, then I might move it up to tier 1. This is probably like one of those 50-50 ones. Next, Despia. Despia's kind of calmed down a little, and by a little, I mean it's still tier 1. I definitely am more confident in it winning than a deck like Dragon Link. While Dragon Link is good and definitely can get a win against a deck like Despia, there's still just so many ways to play that deck. Like, you got Branded Eldritch, Despia this, Despia that, blah blah. And it's really being put into more than one deck. So it's just really, I feel like a lot of people are just like countering so heavy towards Despia that way may make it seem like it's a little bit worse than it is. But I feel like people are starting to kind of like line up a little bit on Despia, like maybe it's not the best deck of the format, and if they do that, it's just going to rear its ugly head again. Flunderies. This one is also another tier 1.5. It's also one of the best decks of the format. Definitely a deck you're going to have to keep an eye out. While yes, 2 hand traps can almost, depending on what your hand can end this, but if you have like something like Book of Moon, Cross Out, or what was it? The Avid Adventure? No. Maybe. The Quick Play. I'm forgetting the name. It kind of helps you to work around those hand traps. And of course, like, you can play stuff like D-Shifter, which is really good against a lot of the best decks. It's good against Despia is good against Dragon Link. Virtual World. I'm going to put it in a tier 2. It's definitely making its presence known, but I feel like it's kind of like a hit or miss. Sometimes the deck's just doing good and topping events. Sometimes it's just not there. Next we got Guru, which actually did get a top, but you know, this is a deck that's just going to get a top every once in a while. By every once in a while, maybe every few months. Being a back row deck, obviously it's going to have a lot, because if it goes second, it's not going to be quite as good. And it's definitely a deck that can still win from time to time, but that's, again, from time to time. Next we got Plunder Patrol, which has actually been doing pretty good. I wouldn't say I'm confident in it enough to put it in the tier 2 quite yet. I definitely think it's like a solid rogue deck. Like, you'll probably see it from time to time. I've seen it from time to time, but there are ways to kind of like neutralize this deck. Salamangreat actually got a couple tops, but then again, I'm just not too confident in its ability to continuously top just yet. Obviously, the deck got a lot stronger after the ban list, you know, 3 Mirage Stalio, even though some decks don't quite play Mirage Stalio, but you got the 3 Circle. And if Gazelle comes off, then, you know, this deck might actually be capable of moving up to the tier 2 and tier 1.5. Because I've been seeing people play like Adventure Salamangreats. I think there was like maybe a branded Salamangreat. Sky Strikers. This is really hard to tell because I feel like Sky Strikers have definitely taken a little bit of a backseat. But Sky Strikers is just a deck that's really hard to kind of place. It's either a tier 2 or a rogue for me. Personally, I'm going to put it in the rogue because it's not making its presence known as quite as a deck like Virtual World or Adding Nister. I feel like I put it like literally in the same class as Fractal. While yes, it can definitely win, it's definitely not a deck you need to fear the most. Phantom Knights. I think I'll put it in tier 2. But to be honest, I really want to put it into rogue because Phantom Knights, they're just not impressing me at all. Even when I see it or go against it, like there are ways to easily deal with this deck. Sure, if it goes first, it can be pretty difficult, but if it goes second, it's going to be a rough time for them. And it's just not really making as much of a presence as most of the other decks. Like, if I were to pit this against like Floowandereeze, Dragon Link, or Despia, I definitely feel like Phantom Knights is the weaker out of the 3. Lunalights. For right now, in the everything else, you know, having the Tiger back is definitely really cool. It makes the deck actually playable and a little bit fun, but then again, it does have a chance to brick, which is a bit unfortunate, and that's the only thing I noticed with this deck. Like, sure, if you get the ideal hand, you're golden, unless your opponent has a drop or a dark roll, then you're just immediately dead. Dinos, they got like 1 top, but they're dinos. I view them the same as Guru Control. You know, they'll pop up every here and then you won't see them again for a while, and then they pop up again. DDD, I'm actually gonna put it in rogue. DD's kind of calmed down a lot. Like, I haven't really seen it get many tops, but it's definitely a deck that I feel like could potentially get some tops, but it's also a little bit of a harder deck to kind of use, and that's kind of like a little bit of a barrier against, I guess, like for a deck like DDD. Heroes, they're nice, but they're just not impressing. This really don't really build a whole lot of like end boards that I feel like are really threatening enough for this top deck. Hell, literally yesterday I went to a tournament and beat this deck. And I'll tell you what I beat it with once we get to it on this list, but I definitely didn't beat it with anything up here. Live Twins. That's a rogue deck. The way Live Twins functions, like, the one problem this deck has, which prevents it from being higher on this list, is that it doesn't really have a very strong win condition. And if your opponent doesn't have any monsters in the field, then they can kill your opponent just fine, but if they do, this is a deck that I feel like you could probably just out-resource. But that's if you can go through all their hand traps, because this is a deck that can play a lot of hand traps, because it's just got all that free space. Invoked. I'm happy to put it here. Honestly, I've been sick of Invoked, so I'm really glad that it's just kind of fallen off, because honestly, with how the meta has shifted, it's just not really the most popular version. Not even with Despia. So definitely everything else, you know, it'll make an appearance here and there, but it's just not really making much of an impact at all. Predaplants. Yeah, there's actually a branded Predaplant build, but I haven't really seen that continue, so I'm not really too confident in its chances, but Predaplant is a deck that can either be right here or up here, depending on how your hand looks. Because, you know, this deck can run stuff like Super Poly with ease. And Dragosapilli is definitely a really good monster, especially if you combine it with, like, branded and stuff like that. Next, Marine Cess. Now, this is actually a deck I've been actually messing around with, you know. I didn't think it was going to be anything impressive, even with the new support, so I took it to a tournament and went X1 with it. Yeah, I really underestimated this deck. Marine Cess is definitely a lot stronger of a deck than you think. I definitely have to put it in tier 2, mainly just because, like, it's not my first time, like, using it out of the tournament with the new stuff, and it's been really impressive speed in this deck, this one, like, it's just trouncing decks that I thought it would lose to. And the one thing with Marine Cess is that a lot of people don't know how to really hand trap it. Like, you know, when you activate Silent Mining, most people are like, hand trap that Silent, get out of the way. But when I see them hand trap a Silent Mining, I'm like, they took the bait. Because you can search through more ways than just the Silent Mining. And with the new support, it just makes it all that much easier. The Spring Girl, the Marine Cess Dive, most definitely. And this deck is definitely I'd say it's easily the most slept on deck in this format. Hell, I almost topped when I was playing Marine Cess without a side deck. You heard me correctly. So, quick story on this, I went to a tournament. I was expecting to duel on this side. I wasn't planning on actually competing. Then randomized, like, you know, come on, just compete, I'm just like, sure. I'll enter, lose my first 2 matches, then drop. Well, that didn't happen. I ended up winning. Obviously, I didn't top because, you know, not having that side deck definitely hurt in the one matchup against Eldritch. To be honest, Eldritch is really the only deck I feel I can just completely shut down this deck. Against most decks, it ends up doing pretty well. Because in my build, I run like 2 Wave, 3 Imperm, and 2 Veiler. Of course, a lot of that just means nothing to Eldritch. But definitely a very strong deck that people are really sleeping on. I definitely don't plan to do a deck profile of it. Next, Mystic Mine. Thank God. Mech Knights also, you know, they appear every so often, but, you know, it's same as Dinos, same as Guru and Heroes. Liberancor, I can't put it in higher. Same for Sun Novelin. So yeah, these decks, don't expect them to do much. Drytron. I have a quick question. Konami, Why did you bring Benton back? Why? I honestly don't understand that. And now we gotta deal with Drytron again. And the unfortunate thing is it's performing very well. It's topping tour. Honestly, I'd put it in a tier 1.5, like a low tier 1.5. Not as good as Flunderies and Dragon Link, but definitely better than the decks down here. And next we got Based. To be honest, I think Based is just stupid, in my opinion. I hate engine decks so much. It's one of the reasons why I think this format is complete garbage. Because there we got this engine, and then you got this engine, then you got Therion, then Venture, then Punk, blah blah blah. Eldritch. Well, they hit Eldritch already. I'm so sick and tired of this deck. And now people are playing branded stuff in it. Like, come on, can we just hit Eldritch? Do you guys like playing against trap decks? No? Didn't think so. Well, because Connor doesn't seem to know how to hit Eldritch, it looks like you're going to be playing it probably forever. Eldritch is definitely one of the best decks in the format, and it's a deck that you really have to rely on your side because most hand traps just don't really do much anything to it. DD Crow affects it, the Dimensional Shifter does, and that's really it. Maybe Ash, maybe Droll. ABC. I put it in the road, definitely has calmed down quite a bit. Dolce, again, just not really doing too much right now, or barely anything at all. Dynamorphia, definitely a deck that a lot of people kind of underestimate. And it can be very good, except for time, which most duels tend to go into time, or at least get very close to it. And if your opponent just tries to combo off into time, you're going to lose. Because paying all that life points, well, makes Rex turn pretty good. If you're getting close to time, it's not going to matter too much. Sword Soul. Tier 1. To be honest, out of all the competitive decks, I think Sword Soul is probably the most fair to play. Now, obviously, it's really good, you know. You can set up multiple disruptions and all that. It's one of the best decks of the format. But it's not annoying like Drytron or Eldritch. It doesn't take as long as something like Dragon Link. And it doesn't have a boss monster like M-Pen that's impossible to deal with. Punk. I'm actually going to put this in tier 1. Now, this is also another one that's kind of hard to put anywhere because some people play pure Punk, some people play as an engine in this or engine in that. I'm just basically speaking as Punk as a whole. Or at least the best version of Punk you can play, which would be tier 1. And lastly, Scareclaw. It got a top, but I just don't think that's going to really continue. I feel like that was a top that was more or less because of not really many people know what Scareclaw does. I don't know what it does. I don't know a single thing that deck does. So I can't even tell you much about it because I don't really know anything about it. So this is basically the meta I expect to be going forward. A few things might change here and there, you never know. Things can always change. But definitely tier 1, you got the Branded Despia, Sword Soul, and Punk, which I'd say essentially the best decks of the format. As well as Dragon Link, Drytron, Flunderies, and Eldritch very close behind. Definitely gotta watch out for your base, Marine Cess. Well, not many people play Marine Cess, but I definitely think people should play it more. Phantom Knights, Virtual, and Agnister. definitely know how to play these, and these decks, don't even worry about it. So that's going to be all for this tier list. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video I make. Bye.